Καλημέρα, παρακαλώ να καθίσουμε, να αρχίσουμε. Έχουμε δώσει το εκπαιδευτικό τέταρτο. Σήμερα έχουμε τα workshop, έχουμε τον καθηγητή τον κύριο Πιτσιλαδή και την ομάδα του. Θέλουμε βαθιά να ευχαριστήσουμε τον κύριο Αγγελούδη που ήρθε μαζί με τον κύριο Πιτσιλαδή. Τον κύριο Σάνου Σούτχαλ, thank you very much. Where are you? Okay. Thank you very much. Τον Miss Mersa Astrat, thank you very much. Την κυρία Χερουβίμ, την κυρία Αργητάκη, τον κύριο Κορέ που θα βοηθήσουν για αυτά τα workshop. Έχουμε μια πάρα πολύ στενή σχέση και συνεργασία και χωρίς να έχουμε συνεννοηθεί, μόνο με τα μάτια κοιταζόμαστε με τον κύριο Πιτσιλαδή και καταλαβαίνουμε τι θέλει ο ένας και ο άλλος. Τις 3, το είπα και χθες, 3 τελευταίες εβδομάδες τον παρακολουθούσα μέσω των μηνυμάτων και του ηλεκτρονικού ταχυδρομείου σε όλο τον κόσμο. Αργεντινή, Ρωσία, Βραζιλία, έχω χάσει την μπάλα και εγώ, και Κίνα. Άρα ό,τι μας λέει, ό,τι μας φέρνει είναι ό,τι πιο σύγχρονο στον ελληνικό αθλητισμό. Είμαστε εδώ γιατί τον αγαπάμε τον ελληνικό αθλητισμό, είμαστε εδώ γιατί αγαπάμε τη χώρα μας, είμαστε πατριώτες, αγαπάμε τη χώρα μας, θέλουμε η χώρα μας να γίνει πάλι αυτό που ήταν παλιά, αυτό που μας είπε χτες ο καθηγητής ο κύριος Πετρόπουλος. Και τι θέλουμε υψηλό ήθος να έχουμε και επιστήμη, διάβασμα. Δεν θέλουμε κάτι άλλο και το όραμά μας. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ που είστε εδώ και μπορούμε να ξεκινήσουμε με το βίντεό μας και να καλέσουμε μετά τον καθηγητή να έρθει να ξεκινήσει τα workshop.
Καλημέρα σας. Έχω τρομερή χαρά που βρίσκομαι μαζί σας σήμερα, πραγματικά, και ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για τα όμορφα λόγια του Τάικου Λουβάρη. Σε ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Ευχαριστώ το Sports Excellence, την πρώτη ορθοπαιδική κλινική που μας έχετε καλέσει εδώ στο Foundation του Σταύρος Νιάρχος. Από σεβασμό και στην ομάδα μου που έχουν έρθει από Αιθιοπία, έχουν έρθει από Βρετανία, Θα με επιτρέψετε να μιλήσω στα αγγλικά και έτσι για να μην χαλάω και την ελληνική γλώσσα με τρόπο που τα λέω. Και για τους λίγους από εσάς που μπορεί να μην καταλαβαίνετε τα αγγλικά τόσο καλά, μην ανησυχείτε, γιατί αυτά που θα σας παρουσιάσουμε σήμερα θα παρουσιαστούν και με εικόνα και με πολλά βίντεο και με πολλά demonstration, που σημαίνει ότι θα περάσουμε, ελπίζω, όλοι καλά και θα μάθουμε αρκετά καλά πράγματα. So I've just explained, Mersha and Sean, that I will speak in English so that you guys can also follow and also interact, and I look forward to a very, very exciting day. And I also would like to welcome those who are watching us through live streaming from hopefully around Greece. So let's make a start. And as you also heard from Takis in the introduction, I will try, or together with my team, I will try to make the practicals and the information I'm going to present to you relevant to you and very practical, and also very much the very latest. So right this morning with the team, we were even updating some of the slides this morning, not because we weren't prepared, but because we wanted to be as up-to-date as possible. Okay? So, my first slide, please. Okay. All right. So, in view of being up-to-date, and this is a terrible slide from the point of view of teaching because there's too much text. Don't worry about the text. I'm showing you this because this is only the 31st of October, and read the headline. The headline is, Japan doctors warn heat could make 2020 Olympic marathon deadly. That's a very, very strong word, deadly. And if you carry on reading through that, which you don't need to, it makes the public who are reading about the Tokyo Olympics quite alarmed and worried about how the athletes are going to cope, and also how the spectators and even the officials and those responsible for the Olympic teams are going to cope. If you've seen members of the Olympic family, they tend to not look too healthy sometimes. So they're also at risk. So should we be worried about this? And hence also the topic for the first session, which has got to do with extreme environments, the heat, but also altitude, which are really, really important for the coach, for those who are involved with the teams. Am I worried about this? No. Why am I not worried about it? Because as long as you prepare, then you don't have to worry. So are we prepared? Yes, we're prepared. We're prepared because we have a group called the members of the Adverse Weather Impact Expert Group, which I feel very privileged and honored to be part of. And we've been working very hard to try and make sure our athletes, your athletes, the Olympic family, the spectators are safe. And also making it the latest technology, and some of the technology you will see today. Okay? And you may recognize some of these names, but these are some of the experts in the field. So a lot of what we discuss, clearly I can't share the details with you, but by the end of this first hour, you'll understand why we mustn't worry. But what we must do, and the coaches in the room, those involved in the preparation of athletes, take note, prepare, and then you have nothing to fear. And don't think because you live in Greece where the summer is very warm, you are prepared for Tokyo. No. And another example is Ethiopia and Kenya, and I'll show some examples because I can tell you theoretical things, but you want evidence for what we're going to say. So I will show you that in Africa, you have the perception that in Africa, people are running in the heat. They're not. Those of you who've had the pleasure to go to Kenya will know when you train at 5 o'clock in the morning, you've got to wear hoods, you've got to wear gloves because it's freezing. And you'll see what happens if you don't prepare. And I'll show you some evidence of that shortly. But let's get started. So temperature has an impact on performance, we know that. And for reasons that you know very well, typically because of broadcasting, TV, the Olympic Games are normally held in August, which is actually, from a point of view of health and safety, and even sometimes performance in the endurance events, because remember, the symposium yesterday and today, and I must use the opportunity to congratulate the organizer for putting together a fantastic program, the emphasis on endurance. And we know that the Olympic Games normally are in the month of August, which is typically in hot environments, hot parts of the world. And you can see here, and all of you will remember the temperatures we experienced also in Athens in 2004. But as already mentioned to you, the heat is going to have impact on performance. And the public, you, your athletes, deserve to produce very high levels of performance. So what can we do, what can you do to ensure maximum performance? That is what we're going to talk about this morning. This is some data which we put together some time ago showing the year here and time. And these were the fastest times up until the Athens marathon for the Olympic Games, the fastest times. And these were the Olympic marathon times. Can you see the difference, the disparity between the two? Because why? Because of temperature. The marathon is typically being held in hot environments, like the situation in Tokyo. And so the question we had, that's why I want to use some evidence, in preparation for 2008, you remember which Olympic Games that was? It was Beijing. How do we prepare for those conditions? And what would be the performance times? And the prediction was that in Beijing, they would run approximately 2:11. That was a prediction. And those of you who know the marathon very well will know that was very much the wrong prediction. Sometimes science doesn't produce the right answer. In Athens, I'm sure many of you were there. I was certainly there watching this. And we saw Stefano Baldini winning the gold medal in the beautiful Kalimarmaro. Was he the best athlete on the day? Yes, he was. He was the best prepared. Was he the most talented? Was he the best marathoner of the group? No. But arguably, he was the best prepared. And the best prepared is going to be the one that wins. And hence the team, you, are so very important. I remind you, the world record holder during the Athens Olympics was Paul Tergat, who failed miserably during that race. Actually, Paula Radcliffe was even worse. She didn't complete. They were not prepared. So, hopefully, what we do this morning, we can help you, or at least we all work together to prepare our athletes as well as we can. So, the best prepared are usually the ones who do very well. So, what can we do? Is it enough just to live in a hot place like Athens, or in Addis Ababa, or in Nairobi? The answer clearly is going to be, and I'll show you evidence of that, no. You have to acclimatize. And I don't know what the Greek word is, but someone's going to help me just now. We need to acclimate. Acclimate in comparison to acclimatization. Acclimate is artificial. Artificial acclimatization. And I'll show you how we do that shortly. And you can see here a properly designed and applied acclimatization program, or artificially acclimation program, decreases the risk of heat-related illness and improves performance. So makes it safe for the athlete, and it makes it also performance enhancing. I would actually like to see this also being applied to the Olympic family, because as we know, during the Olympic Games, a lot of the medical teams are stretched, not only with the supporting of the athletes, but supporting often the elderly Olympic family, or indeed the officials, and so on. So anyway, And in Beijing, in preparation for Beijing, we were expecting 35 degrees and 95% humidity. These are very, very difficult conditions, as you know very well. So acclimation, the artificial preparation in hot conditions, is essential. What does it do? If you acclimate in hot conditions, your heart rate goes down for the given amount of work. Your core temperature, the temperature of your body, goes down, and we'll show you shortly how we can easily do that. And also, you sweat more, and the concentration of various electrolytes in your sweat goes down. So acclimation is essential. I'll show you, for the scientists in the room, because again you want evidence, there's no better paper on this than 1993, showing that if you bring someone into the hot room for 9 consecutive days, you find that their core temperature goes up the first time, the second time, the third time. By the 10th day, you can see they can do 30 minutes longer before reaching the same core temperature. And you can see here the core temperature on the first day, on the last day. So, if your athlete wasn't acclimated to those conditions and went to the Olympics, their core temperature would reach that very high value. When clinicians see this, who are not involved in sport, they say, emergency, emergency. It's not an emergency, they're just working hard. But if you haven't prepared, your temperature goes high, to very high levels, within a very short period of time. But if you've prepared, you can go for another 30 minutes before you reach that high temperature. And that high temperature, you could actually remove this and put performance. It's the same thing. So you can easily improve performance by simply spending 1 hour to 90 minutes in a hot room. So easy. But do the athletes often do that? They don't always do that. Something as simple as that. I'll give you an example, which was actually for me in one almost career changing. The failure of arguably the greatest middle and long distance run of all time, Kenenisa Bekele, in Mombasa in 2007, changed actually the way my career went, that of my team. And the reason I'm here today talking to you about all this was because of his failure on the day. What happened was, those of you who may remember, the cross-country championships, again because of TV, being organized where? In Mombasa, okay, during the hottest time of the year. I mean, it's a crazy decision if you think about it, but we're not here to criticize the decisions. The decision was made, so we have to work with that. Greater than 30 degrees, greater than 90% humidity, and run what? Cross-country. Anyway, so I was again fortunate to be at that race, watching the athletes run. The IAAF had arranged a symposium, so a lot of us scientists was there. And in that race, Kenenisa was leading. He was quite far ahead. And suddenly, he stops. In the women's race, Geleta Burka was winning. Suddenly, she stops and she starts taking her clothes off. She didn't know where she was. She was disorientated. So who won the race? In the men's race, Cesare Tadesse won it because he was best prepared. In the women's race, Lorna Kiplagat won it from Kenya because she was also best prepared. Tadesse was prepared in Madrid, in Spain, using acclimation strategies. Lorna Kiplagat, the Kenyan, had actually started running for Holland, had been prepared in Holland to acclimate to those conditions. So on the day, science beat talent. So for me, on that day as well, I realized we really need to combine the two, talent and science. And those of you who will attend tonight will present the same theme, talent and science as a cure for the cancer of doping. But that's for tonight. Please come. So, Kenenisa didn't finish. So why was this an opportunity for us? It was an opportunity for us because the management, global sport, said, we need to do something. We can't have the best athletes losing because we're not prepared. Because those of you who've been following some of our work will know that up until 2007, I was known as the DNA man, or Indiana Jones, who was traveling Africa and Jamaica to collect DNA from these athletes, to try and understand, are these great athletes because of genetics or what? But up until this point, we were never allowed to really study and intervene and implement and carry out scientific studies. This was an opportunity. And here you see Kanisa very despondent, very upset, walking away, having dropped out of that race. So, with his management, he invited our team, myself, my students at the time, and we put together this project called By Failing to Prepare, You Are Preparing to Fail. I mean, what a great statement. And the idea was to try and prepare the same athletes for Osaka and for Beijing. You can consider it now for Tokyo, the same analogy. Okay? And our quest was we were going to win gold. That was what we wanted. And for me as a scientist, it was like being a young boy in a toy factory or a sweet shop, because this was great. We could really do science for the first time. But we had to be prepared as well. Not only the athletes were to be prepared, we had to be prepared. So what do you do? And this is what you should be doing now for Tokyo, especially if you have endurance athletes, okay? We started looking at the years from 2006 to the 543, and we looked at the temperatures at the different times depending on which athlete we were working with. Whether the athlete was going to compete in a final at 10 o'clock or was going to compete maybe in a semi-final or qualification run at 5 p.m. And we looked at the times, and also, because we were particularly focused on the Ethiopian team, the temperature in Addis Ababa. And look, the temperature of Addis Ababa, it may surprise you. During August, it's 15 degrees. That's actually quite cold. So it's not good preparation for Beijing. So what do you do? What would you do? You have 15 degrees, the athletes are going to compete in the heat. What do you do? If you're based in the UK and you have a lot of money, or in America, or Australia, or Norway, no problem. You buy an environmental chamber that typically costs £100,000. The budget for the Ethiopian Olympic team was $1. So there was no going to be, I'm being facetious obviously, but they clearly didn't have the budget to do that. So what did we do? The other thing that you may not know is that during August, don't send your athletes for high altitude training in Addis Ababa, because this is what's going to happen. Or this is going to happen. Okay. Very, very painful to get khalazi or hail to fall on you, okay? And then try and run on the dirt road, which is the best place to be running when it's muddy and wet. And when Mersha talks to you tonight about scientific basis of training, and then you ask very good questions like, okay, you plan your periodization, you plan when you're doing your sessions. He will tell you, no, we wait for God to intervene. When will it stop raining? We train, okay? And you try and accommodate that. So what did we do? We looked at the internet. We tried to predict the weather conditions every day. We wanted to acclimate the athletes before going to Osaka or Beijing. We're going to talk shortly also about altitude, the importance of altitude. We didn't want the athletes to go too soon to Osaka or Beijing, so we wanted them to stay as long as possible in Addis Ababa. Despite people wanting, in the media, wanting the athletes to go weeks before, no. So basically, right 10 days or so before even the final, we were still in Addis Ababa. So every day, Saturday, we'd look at the weather, Sunday, Monday, and this was weather in Osaka in Japan. And we wanted to create those conditions for the athletes. So how did we do that? And here you see the environmental chamber that we built. And maybe after, during coffee time, I can tell you some interesting stories about how we did all that. But so you can see here, welcome to Osaka. Actually, we were in Addis Ababa. The temperature and humidity in Osaka today is 34 degrees, 67 degrees. We had measured it that day, and we told the athletes, this is what you would experience if you were in Osaka. In my laboratory, this is what our environmental chamber looks like. And you can see the example. We can create any condition you want. And here, for example, you have one of our athletes. This is quite some years ago now. And you'll see this a lead coming from his bottom. He's got a thermometer up his bottom, measuring his temperature. And today, shortly, we'll also show you that we don't have to do that anymore, because luckily we have some technology which we'll share with you shortly. Because it's actually quite difficult, especially in an Olympic final, to ask an athlete to put a thermometer up their bottom. But we will talk about the importance of some of this technology shortly, because it can save lives, especially in a collapsed runner. But we'll come back to that shortly, okay? So this is the room was given. And this, I won't mention the name of the athlete, but this is one of the most famous of all Ethiopian athletes. He says, Yanis, you can have a room in my house. Fantastic. The problem was that this room was on the 3rd floor. And there was no electricity, constant electricity, and lots of other problems that we had. But we can discuss that later. So with our students, we started improvising. We created a hot room. You can see here, and I hope there's no health and safety people in the room, because we broke every rule, okay? Look at that floor. This is a nightmare wanting to happen. I mean, come on. But with heaters, here you can see a kettle. This kettle was boiling water to create humidity. High tech? No, but it worked. 3rd floor, carrying the treadmill up. Unfortunately, one person lost a finger in this process, and I'm not being joking, it's serious. It was very difficult to get this treadmill to the top. In terms of providing constant electricity, we bought a truck engine that we converted into a generator to provide us with electricity so we wouldn't hurt the athletes. Anyway, we got it to work. And here you see the individuals putting this together. As you can see here, you can see this room actually was outside the athletes' saloni, or their lounge, their nice room. So you can see it's quite a difficult environment to do this kind of thing. I apologize for the sweaty man here, okay? I had to test it myself. If it's good enough for the athlete, it's got to be good enough for me too. So I wanted to test it as well, and excuse the 2008 hairstyle. Sean, if you just prepare yourself. So shortly, I will show you the way, not necessarily at this time, because I told you a little bit about the core temperature method that we were using at the time. But since then, we're fortunate enough that the technology has moved on. And so rather than using a thermometer up someone's bottom, you can actually use these pills, which we'll show you shortly. Sean, if you just join me. And there have been a number of studies that actually have replicated, microphone please, or you can use this microphone, that have replicated this technology and actually show how it works. And also, in the presentation tonight, I'll show you some other data from using this technology. But just to convince you that this does work, and you can do this during a race situation, I'll just show you this slide before I pass over to Sean. This is from the winner of the New York Marathon. For data protection, I won't mention who he was, but he won the race. And have a look at the information you get. So you have time, you have temperature, and look what happened. And remember, as I said to you before, when you have a high temperature, the physician in the room, don't worry if you're exercising. Let me ask you differently. Who's going to have the highest temperature at the end of the marathon? There's only one right answer. Who's going to have the highest temperature at the end of the marathon, beside the person who collapses? Who? So who? The winner. The winner is going to have the highest temperature. Why will the winner have the highest temperature? Because he's running the fastest. Temperature is a proxy measurement of metabolism. So whoever's running faster is going to have the higher temperature. So keeping that in mind, let's see what happened to this athlete. He starts at a normal temperature of 38, and this is during the race. Starts, goes up to 38.6, and during this first hour of the race, he's running in the group, in the pack. And because he's running in the pack, it's a little bit easier because he's getting sheltered by the other athletes. If it was cycling, the same, sheltered by the other cyclists. What happens after the first half? He attacks, and you can see his temperature goes right up. And then he settles down a little bit, and then he pulls away and he goes and wins the race. Because of time, I won't show you the athlete that was dropped here. But from memory, I can remember, and Sean will confirm this, at this point here, when this athlete shoots up, the other athlete goes up and then drops. And that's, again, useful information to determine how your athlete behaved on that day during the race. Okay, so Sean, let's do a little demo for our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Yes, as we've discussed and described, measuring core temperature and understanding the core temperature of your athlete during a race is very important. But as you saw in the video, it's very difficult to get an accurate, scientifically valid way of measuring core temperature, at least until now. And the way we can do this now is by using a core temperature pill. And this is how we got this data during this marathon. So it's a very small pill that is maybe size of paracetamol or ibuprofen. And when you ingest this, this can record constantly core temperature every 5 seconds or every 30 seconds. And so the issue with other measurement devices, such as the rectal thermometer, is you have to be with the athlete to measure. And with other older versions of this pill, you had to be with the athlete to measure. So clearly when they're running 2 hours and 5 minutes for a marathon, I can't keep up for very long. So we need a method which can record the data. And so this small pill can record 1,000 minutes of data externally, so you can give it to the athlete the night before, and they just switch it on, give it to them, it's recording data, and then 1,000 minutes later you can come back and collect all of that data you just recorded. So you can, in the evening before, you can set it up, give it to your athlete, your professor, or athlete. They take it, they swallow it. And then throughout the duration of the race, in real time, when I'm with an athlete.
Can we change the... Thank you.
Here we go. So when we are next to the athlete, we will constantly receive live data, or a live data stream of core temperature. So as you see, it's clearly it's not 26 degrees, but as you just swallowed it, as it's becoming warmer with the body heat, this temperature that you see here will begin to rise. And then over the duration of the marathon, this will obviously record and track the core temperature. So if anyone's interested in the professor's core temperature over the next couple of hours, you can speak to me afterwards, but maybe not so interesting.
And what we are trying to do, thank you very much, Sean, for that. We'll come back to my temperature later on. And during the demonstration in an hour or so, when we have one of our elite athletes join us, he will also ingest the pill, and we'll see what happens when he's running outside and also running on the treadmill. So we'll get some live data from our athletes shortly about that. But what we are trying to do is be able to do these measurements all live in real time and unobtrusively. Unobtrusively means that we're not around the athlete. And I was speaking early on with Takis about some of their interest as sports excellence. And their interest very much at the moment is also looking at firefighters. Again, this is the technology you want for your firefighters or your emergency services. We are also currently in discussions with the American military. When soldiers go into Afghanistan or they're in a difficult situation, can you pull them back because you see some strange data? So there's a lot of technology that can be developed for sport that we can use in hospitals and telemedicine. We'll talk more about that later, so I won't go completely off topic. So, going back to the laboratory, okay, going back to Osaka, some of you who are middle distance fans will recognize this athlete. He was, let's see him run during the hot room. And actually, I could see Mersha feeling homesick there because there's some nice Ethiopian music in the background to try and make the athletes comfortable and enjoy the hour in the hot room. And you'll see here, this is a very young Barry Fudge, who became actually the physiologist of Mo Farah. And subsequent after this, myself and Barry were accused by some as stealing the secrets of the Ethiopians, giving it to Mo Farah, and that's why Mo Farah started beating the Ethiopians. That is not the case. This is science, this is in publication and so on, and looking after, trying to increase global knowledge. So here's another athlete, which some of you again will recognize. And you can see that room is very, very hot. At the same time, we didn't want to leave anything to chance. We wanted to ensure we could prepare the athletes as well as possible. So again, we used, as you can see here, ice jackets. We used ice collars. The idea was that the athlete was going to use this right up until the start of the race. So we left nothing to chance. The importance of preparation, the importance of science. And again, here we see Kenesa Bekile also doing the same preparation. So what was the outcome? Did this work? I would certainly not stand here and say to you, we are responsible for his victory. No. But we allowed him to perform at his best on the day. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And it was very important because also it was the Ethiopian millennium as well, so this is a very important victory. And actually this was the other athlete we saw, Shileshi, who was being prepared in the first video. So both athletes did very well, won gold and silver. And all the athletes we prepared, almost all, should I say, won either gold, silver, or bronze. So it really did work. And the team was really happy. This is a much younger Yanis with some of our members. There's Kenenisa, there's his brother Tariko, Barry, and Chris Easton here. And we celebrated, we went dancing, as you also do with the athletes, to make sure that you can celebrate with them. And then we said, okay, Osaka worked. We learned a lot. We published a lot of this work. If this is new to you, it's because you're not reading the literature. This has all been published now. So we then moved on to Beijing, because now we had learned some lessons. I don't know if you recognize who this is. That's the great Haile Gebrselassie, okay? Again, we had the fortune there to work with him and prepare him. He went on in 2007 to break the world record, and again in 2008, broke the world record. And my last meeting with him was just a few months ago in Addis Ababa, because now he's our ambassador to the Sub2 project. His quote was, imagine if I had all of this technology, Yanis, that you have now in Sub2 at the early part of my career, what I could have done. Well, you have that technology now. You have access to the technology. You have sport excellence. I've seen the laboratories. There's nothing I'm going to say today, nothing, besides maybe the genetics tonight, that sports excellence can't do today. And we've been working with some of their team. Some of the demonstration will be done together with the sports excellence team. They're as good as our team are. So you can get access to this. And there's also the universities, or the TEFI universities, that have some of these technologies too. So engage with them. I'm not showing you rocket science that you have no access, because it's the worst thing to do. Show someone a nice plate of food, then take it away. We're showing you the food, and then you can eat it. So what happened in Beijing? All the predictions and the worries of deaths and slow times turned out to be wrong. We're not always right. Don't always believe the scientist. Because we were wrong. We didn't predict this guy's performance. He ran 2.6 something. It was incredible. Unfortunately, went on a few years later to actually have an accident, and he unfortunately in that accident, a horrific accident, he died. But this is his performance here. You can see here his time, 2:06:32, and you can see it was very much, as far as time, 2:06 was very much off scale compared to the other Olympic marathons at the time. So more in line with the fast marathons of the time. Using the same protocols that I just showed you, what other results did we have? You can see there's Kenisa Bikila and his brother winning gold and silver and bronze, the team. And in the 10K, we had the same outcome. You can argue, okay, Yanis, but you're working with the best athletes, so you're going to win anyway. You saw what happened in Mombasa. The best don't always win. You saw what happened in Athens. So we, in a small way, contributed. How did the Ethiopian team do? With a very small, if no budget for scientific preparation, they came, as you can see here, 5th. A great success. So, to conclude the first part, and I must speed up because of time. So how are we going to prepare for Tokyo? You should know this now. You should have looked at all those temperatures. You should be well prepared now. And these are the kind of temperatures you would expect. Looking at 2015, 2018, in July and August, depending when your team is going to go. You've got to go earlier maybe, depending on what your sport is. And you could be faced with conditions as high as 28, 29 and above. So how are we preparing? Should we be worried as the expert group of the IOC? As I said to you, we're doing work. By working with the local organizing committee, we are collecting samples along the different courses. Which are the big worrying courses? The marathon, the race walking events, football, triathlon. Some high-profile, high-risk or higher-risk events we are looking at. And we are taking measurements along the course to see, could we change the course if it was dangerous? We've decided that we don't need to change the course. Do we need to change the start of the race? If you read that initial newspaper report, it was bring the time earlier for safety reasons. Let's have a look at that. Here's the data. And you can see for different years, depending on what year you look at, the marathon start time was planned for 7 o'clock. The problem with 7 o'clock is that the athletes would be finishing at the highest part of the day. So the last mile, the last 5 kilometers, where it becomes the more difficult one. And actually, if you want to use scaremongering words, dangerous, it would be when the sprint finishes on. So what would you do? You could change the course. You can change the time. You could do it in the evening, like in Athens. What we've decided to do is exactly what the newspaper article said that the Medical Association of Japan recommended. We had recommended that, is to shift the time earlier to 5:30. And that's the recommendation we've made, and we should hear soon if that recommendation has been accepted. So, should we be worried? No. The time is being changed. Let's enjoy the marathon. Let's enjoy the victory of the best prepared athletes on the day, and let's stop worrying. Okay. The title was altitude, and I'll now move on to altitude because those are the two topics we're going to discuss in the first lecture. And this one is equally relevant to you. I would argue maybe even more relevant to you for endurance. And I will say something that may potentially upset someone, but I'll say it anyway. If you want to have a competitive endurance athlete, especially in marathon running, and you're living at sea level, you cannot be competitive. If you are competitive, I'm afraid you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, meaning that you're taking prohibitive substances. Because there's no way, and this time I won't be wrong as a scientist, you cannot be competitive if you're living and training at sea level. And please don't stand up later and say, well, okay, we can use hypoxic chambers. You can't. You may get a very tiny benefit, but if you're lucky. So this is very, very important. And I was really very pleased to see yesterday when we had the press conference and we discussed what Sports Excellence is trying to do together with Sub2 and other groups. Someone came up to me and said, yes, we want to support what you guys are doing. We will pay potentially to send some athletes to Ethiopia or Kenya for altitude training. Some individuals went up to Mercia, said we'd love to send some of our athletes. So maybe we can start making that link. I feel very disappointed when I don't see the Greek athletes competitive in the marathon, in the Olympic marathon, in the last few Olympics. And let's try and achieve that. Because we have a team that's led by a passionate Greek, making the Ethiopians and Kenyans very successful, but let's also try and help the Greek athletes, at least try and break some of our national records cleanly. So how do we do that? We need altitude training. We need to get our athletes into the field. We have facilities in Kenya, we have facilities in Ethiopia. I've come and given similar talks in Greece for the last 10 years. Not one Greek athlete has come. Why? Athletes from every country has come. So Takis, let's sort this out. So how do you, okay, you come to Kenya, you come to Ethiopia, you come to a facility. What do you do? How long do you come for? And those, who has been for preparation to Kenya, Ethiopia? 1, 2, okay? And I'm sure if I asked you, the first time you went there, how did you feel? Well, how did you feel? The first time you went? Ναι, βεβαίως. Πώς ένιωσες?
Την πρώτη εβδομάδα, ας πούμε, τα πρώτα τρεξίματα, όταν τελείωνα, τα είχαμε πολλά μαύρα. Δεν μπορούσα να τα εξέλθω. Αλλά σιγά σιγά προσαρμοζόμουν και συνείδησα το κλίμα και μπορούσα να κάνω κανονικά προπόνηση. Δεν είχε...
Πόσο καιρό σε πήρε να νιώσεις ότι μπορούσες να κτίσεις κανονικά?
Μετά από 2 εβδομάδες νόμιζα ότι έτρεχα κανονικά. Δεν με επηρέαζε ούτε το οξυγόνο, η έλλειψη οξυγόνου. Ας πούμε, τα πρώτα βράδια ήταν δύσκολο και στο να κοιμάμαι. Ανοίγαμε πόρτες και παράθυρα για να μπορούμε να κοιμηθούμε, γιατί μας πούνε στο κεφάλι από την έλλειψη οξυγόνου. Αλλά μετά τις 2 εβδομάδες μπορούσα να κάνω την κανονική προπόνηση που έκανα και εδώ κάτω στους ίδιους ρυθμούς.
Το όνομα σου?
Γιώργος.
Λοιπόν, όπως ακούσαμε από τον Γιώργο, είναι fast responder. To explain to my team here, he was saying that he went to altitude, and within 2 weeks, he was able to train quite well. He adapted very quickly. The first days, he was difficult sleeping and the normal things that we all experience. But you're very lucky. The reason why you're very lucky, you're a fast responder, because 2 weeks is a very short period of time. Most athletes require 6 to 8 weeks. And even 6 to 8 weeks for some people, they find it terrible. They go away, they say altitude training is a nonsense, I will never go back again. And you know what? They never compete at a high level, cleanly. Okay. Tell us what you did. How did you feel?
Okay, it was really tough the first 3-4 days.
Yes.
I never reached the level of my performance in sea level while I was there. But
impossible to, so you couldn't have.
Yes, it was in 2,200 meters, and okay, it was the group that was with. It was in a very high level, so for me it was very difficult to follow this. It was Moses Kiptanui and a lot of Olympic medalists. So I had to go with them because I didn't know the courses, and it was a matter of security. But it was really like doing a race every day. Okay, after two weeks, I could do some good intervals with them, realizing that if they train in this speed, then it was okay for me to run the same. But it was slower than what I was doing in sea level. 2,200 meters.
Thank you very much for that. And just a few remarks, just for some interaction on that, and I hope we don't break the time slot. It's very interesting as well that you tend to, from what you're telling me, you also adapted reasonably well, but keep in mind that some of you may not adapt so good as these 2 athletes did. But you also are at quite low altitude. What I'm going to show you shortly is, well, what is the perfect altitude? You said 2,200. The British team prefers to train in Sierra Nevada, which is even lower than that. So what altitude should you prepare? And unfortunately, the answer is going to be, we need to find out. We don't really know, but we have some indications. And let's start showing you what some of those indications are. So at this point in his career, Barry moved on to bigger and greater things after doing his PhD with us, and he got a job with British Athletics. They were wise. They invested in science. Before Barry joined the British Athletics team, Mo Farah was being lapped at World Championships. If you ever watched Mo Farah in those early times, he was a lap behind the Ethiopians. But then they adopt science. altitude training. And if you want an update, at least a 2012 update, Barry talks about altitude strategies. For example, live high, train low, plus train high. It is what he had seen in Ethiopia. And it's what he applied to Mo Farah. And that approach is quite different to what they do in Kenya. We'll introduce some of this, but tonight with Mersha we'll talk more in depth because of time. So just briefly, this notion of live high, train low, which is what everyone outside Ethiopia and Kenya does. You're taking a photograph of it, but I can tell you this works to become better than being at sea level. But no Kenyan Ethiopian does this. So is this what you should be doing? I wouldn't photograph this because this is not what you should do. It's better than nothing. But can you see how we need to be updating our science? But how does this work? And maybe this is a good idea to start the altitude acclimation process. So maybe a good first start, but then coming on to something more different, which I'll show you. So what is this? And you can read the paper here by Stray Goodison back in 2001. So it took some very high-level American athletes, as you can see here from the NCAAs, did some testing, and they went 27 days to a training camp. And at this training camp, they were sleeping at high, at Deer Valley at about 2,500 meters, and they were doing interval training low at 1,250 meters. Took 27 days, which again, I believe is too little amount of time to get full adaptation, but again, it's better than nothing. And then they came back and did testing. Did it work? It did work. How did it work? Let's look first at what happened to blood profiles. Just take hematocrit, which is the easiest parameter. Hematocrit is your percentage of red blood cells. So if you get a blood sample and you just make it stand, the red cells will go down because of gravity, the water part here. What percentage is red blood cells? The greater, the better. Those who cheat with EPO and drugs like that increase the EPO levels, the hematocrit levels. So when they arrive at sea level before they go to altitude, it's 41%. Then after being at high altitude for the 27 days, they've gone from 41 to 42.5. By the way, the cheating athlete cannot say, I have high levels of hematocrit because I went to altitude, because you can see it only goes up by 1%. It doesn't go up by 10%, so it's not a good argument. If it's gone up 10%, you've done something else. Okay. But what happens to performance? Yesterday, those of you who attended would have heard some excellent lectures about the limits to VO2 max, also by Evgenia. And you can see here the increase in VO2 max that happens pre and post altitude, going from 76 to 7 to 7.5. It was significant, and actually this is an important improvement. So I was being a little bit naughty when I said it doesn't work before. It does work, but it's not the best application. I'll come back to that. And this was here for the males and here for the females. So it did work. But do you know VO2 max being an Olympic sport? No. What happens to performance? That is what you really want to know. Again, you can see here in the males, the significant improvement, and in the females, the same. So it does work. How does it work? As already mentioned to you, it's by doubling EPO levels in your blood, so you can do that naturally without the need to take drugs. At least using this kind of application, you can go even higher if you use more sophisticated methods, which we'll talk a little bit about. And an increase in hemoglobin and hematocrit on return to sea level. And this is something as well that the Ethiopian and Kenyan athletes know very well. It goes back to what I said to you before, that we didn't want Kenenisa, Sheleshi, or the other athletes to go to Osaka or Beijing for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because those values start coming down quite quickly. So that is what the literature, the old literature, and actually there's some new literature saying don't go to altitude because it doesn't work. Again, let's evaluate. Our experience, it's essential. So, but can we learn from the best athletes in the world? Where do they come from? And this is a map from the Shuttle Radar Topography mission, which tells you the topographical height. The lighter the color, the higher the altitude. The green is actually low altitude. And you can see this is where we are here in Greece. And so the high altitude areas of the world are here in North America, South America, Ethiopia, Kenya, the Himalayas here. So where do the best runners live? They live here, Ethiopia and Kenya. Here we have the region. It's a very lush area. The coffee that we're drinking at the back there is most likely from somewhere in this area. Very lush, and actually where all of our ancestors come from. So all your ancestors, including mine and Mersha's, trace their ancestors back here. But that's for a topic for another day. So in terms of just doing a quick comparison between what the Kenyans do and what the Ethiopians do, and together with Mersha, we'll analyze this more tonight because of time now. So the Kenyans, they typically train in the Eldoret region, which can be as high as 2,800 meters, typically lower, like we heard before, about 2,200. And this is the quotation from some of their most famous coaches, which we'll talk about tonight. Ideal preparation for the live or die, an orthodox strategy which the Kenyans tended to use, which basically means to shift to a higher gear in the middle of a 5-kilometer race and sustain that to the end, which was basically the strategy that they often used. And high altitude, in this particular altitude, would be almost the ideal place to do that. And by the way, as we heard from Takis, I was in Hong Kong, or actually Shenzhen in China a few days ago. I also attended an altitude summit while I was there. And the altitude physiologists were saying, Yanis, 2,800 is low altitude for them. They're more interested at 4,000, 5,000 meters. And we're currently also looking at designing projects to actually take some athletes to higher than 3,000. I'll come back maybe to that later. But this is not really that high, but higher than places that maybe some of you have been. They also have other altitude training camps, like in Embu province in Kenya, and that's where the Kenyan team tends to go before the Olympics, so they know it works. Typically, the athletes are already living at high altitude throughout the year. They're training at high altitude, but they bring the athletes to a camp that's also at high altitude. And most Kenyan athletes, I said to you, already live there. This is a quotation from an African athlete that came to work and train with the Kenyans. He gave up after the first month. And before he left, he said to me, God, these Kenyans train too hard, man. And he never came back. I never saw him on the international scene after that. He gave up. You heard before how difficult it can be. Don't give up. You need it. It's essential. And I mentioned before about how values go down. That's why we want to keep the athletes at high altitude for as long as possible. A few years ago, we published this book on East African runners, and one of the chapters was on the hematological response of these Africans. And let's just look at what happens to hematocrit. These are some of the great Kenyan runners. Watch the range, by the way. We talk about everyone's going to have a high response, or everyone's going to have a high hematocrit. It's not true. Some are 43, some are 56. What happens after 7 days of coming down? Some are 42 now, some are 48. They all go down. So you need to again take this into account. And that's also what happens now. I know certain countries, let's don't pick on too many, but we can pick on Turkey a little bit. We can pick on Bahrain a little bit. What do? They buy the athletes from Ethiopia and Kenya. They send them to Turkey or other countries to train, and then you never hear of them necessarily doing well again because they become sea level after going to those countries. So if they're going to buy an athlete, just don't take them out of their country. So to almost conclude this section because of time, so Barry, together with Mo Farah, intervened. Mo started spending more and more time in Kenya. The London Marathon created a training camp, very impressive, in Kenya, where Mo and other athletes would go and train. And this were the kind of headlines that happened because Mo Farah started beating everybody. And you can see here, this training that he's doing is allowing him to beat us. He was just preparing well. And here you see Barry with Mo, and these successes are well known, I'm sure, to you. Double goals, and double goals. What about the Ethiopian approach? And I'm stealing a slide from Mersha, but those of you tonight will see some of these slides tonight. what is the kind of preparation they were doing in Ethiopia? In preparation for Osaka, in preparation for Beijing. This is 2,400 meters, and the athletes in the room, the coaches in the room, have a look at this training session. And this was 2,400 meters, okay? 16 repetitions. 400 meters, 200 meters. 400 meters in 57 seconds. 200 meters in 27, okay? Doing 16 of those with about a minute or two break at 2,400 meters. I don't think there are many athletes that can actually do this globally, okay? But that's what he did 10 days before going to win gold. But he also did a lot of training at higher altitude. Remember, live high, train low? But look what he's doing. He's starting here at 3,060, going even higher to 3,160 in Toto, where he goes running. So he's living high and training higher. But the literature says, live high, train low. But the Ethiopians, they have sports scientists, they have their universities, they've also read the literature. So they also go to lower areas, which I'll show you shortly, but here's a quick snapshot of the altitude session that we did here with Kenenisa. My team is in the vehicle, we are following him. And when I showed this to Mersha again, just to remind him, he says, wow, he was running quite fast at such high altitude. This is at 3,100 meters now. And the reason we are following him is at that time, our technology required us to be very close to the athlete to take the measurements. And he also didn't mind us following him because he says the car scared away the hyenas that tend to make him run even faster, okay? But you can see the excellent terrain of preparing the athletes. I can't imagine anywhere better in the world to come and train. And also better place to have a facility to nurture our sub-2 athletes. So Mersha, this is where we have to build. But I'm telling you the importance of altitude training. Who am I? I have no gold medals. You want to hear it from the horse's mouth, the expert themselves. Well, there's no better expert to actually explain the importance of altitude than Haile himself. And also, this also explains why a sea level athlete training and living at sea level can't be competitive. And also, this explains why the Kenyan cross-country team has won the cross-country championship something like 16 times in a row. Not because of genetics. Me and Mersha share 99% of our genetics with Kenenisa. It's not genetics. Let's listen to Haile.
For everybody, Toto is a very important place for training. This mountain for me, it's 3,200 meters above sea level. If you're training there, did you check, how difficult? It's a big problem to get just enough oxygen in that mountain. You see, that's our secret. That's one of our advantage. We're training there. We go down for competition. We go for a sea level, like Berlin. You can achieve very easily. I've been training, that mountain the last 21 years since I came to Addis Ababa. And in Toto, it's a magic place, really.
Okay, so, and you saw from where he was walking, the city of Addis Ababa, which is typically located at 2,200, 2,400 meters. He's chosen his house in an area quite high compared to where the city center is, so he's about 2,600, so he's sleeping fairly high, but does a lot of his training in Toto. And as you heard, he's just told you the secret. So in our book on East African running, this notion of live high and train higher was being developed. Again, how many of the Greek athletes are doing this? How many athletes from around the world are doing it? Not many, besides the Ethiopians and Kenyans. That's all they keep on winning. But I mentioned before that they have been reading the literature, and for some of the speed work, they travel 100 kilometers away to a place called Nazareth, and they do work at 1,500 meters. And here you can see a training session that we did with Kenenisa at 1,550 meters, a nice, easy session running at about 15 to 20 kilometers an hour for about an hour, okay? And then we went for a swim, and I was telling Mersha this morning, it's the only time I beat Kenenisa at something. Guess what it was? Swimming. We swam, and I beat him, but he never acknowledged that I beat him anyway. So that's my claim to fame. So Mo Farah has since left his training camp in Kenya. He now tends to spend more time in Ethiopia, in particular in this region here, a place called Sululta, which is also where Mersha and Kenenisa do most of their training, and he'll talk about that tonight. Actually, this track that you see here is actually Kenenisa's track, his high altitude training camp, and this is actually the track that Kenenisa has built so that he and other athletes can come and train. And you can see Mo Farah training there. And my prediction, together with also I think what Mersha may say to you tonight, is that we're pretty confident that Mo Farah will be dominating the marathon for years to come, because he's doing almost everything right in terms of preparation, at least in terms of scientific basis. So just before ending off, I don't want to leave you the impression that we know everything about altitude training. I probably confused you a little bit, because I said some things work, some things don't work necessarily, some respond quickly, some respond. Basically, the individual is more important than averages. So unfortunately, you've got to experiment. Your coaches have to experiment with you. But everyone who wants to do well in endurance, you have to go to altitude or you can't be competitive. And it appears to me, on the basis of all the literature, that live high, train higher tends to be better. How high? I don't know. But Mersha doesn't know this. You'll hear it for the first time now. As I said to you last week in Shenzhen, we discussed with a group to send a group of athletes from sub-2 to actually Peru, to start at 3,000 meters and go even as high as 4,000 meters and see what happens. And so it'll be quite interesting to see what happens if we take the Ethiopians higher. You know, and Mersha, I think we should start thinking about doing that soon, so we can carry on being world dominating. But my point is, how do you decide on the best technology? And I mentioned in the introduction of my remarks that the only technology at the moment that I didn't see in sports excellence is molecular technology. Maybe they're hiding it away, looking at gene expression, gene response, the switching on and switching off of genes, the precision medicine, the personalized medicine aspect, which is what I'll touch on tonight as well. That is the technology we need to solve the doping problem, but it's also the technology we need to find out what works best for someone versus someone else. Why are you a good responder and someone else is a less good responder to altitude or to a particular training program? We heard yesterday a lot of different training programs, but which is the best? The best is not always what you think it is. It's based on data. Takis will never go and do surgery without looking at what he's doing. He needs to see what he's doing. Why would the coach not want the same thing? So what we really want to do, and this is the challenge for the field, this is the challenge for us, is to look from a population of athletes, or in the clinic, a population of patients, who's the poor responder, who's the intermediate responder, who's the very high responder, and then treat them accordingly. We heard yesterday, those of you here, about football training. Everyone in the football team gets trained the same way. Why? Why would you do that? They have different needs. This is important. And again, sport is an excellent model to understand disease, personalized medicine, personalized prescription, stratified medicine. These are all things that we can develop to really understand altitude. Okay, so because not many individuals are interested in giving us access to technology to answer why altitude is important, because not necessarily on the top priority, fortunately, our work sponsored by WADA and the International Olympic Committee, which I'll mention a little bit tonight, has allowed us to look at altitude as a confounder to doping, which means we will soon, in the next months, maybe in the next year, have a very good idea which are the altitude genes. Once we know them, then we can personalize your altitude training. And that's only months away. So maybe by Tokyo, or certainly beyond that, we will be able to individualize your altitude response. So if you know that you can adapt in 2 weeks, although I think you need more than 2 weeks, then you only need to go for 2 weeks, although I'm pretty sure you'll need more than that. And we can use our genome to tell us how to do it. And with that, I'll stop. We can have a break, and we'll continue in 15 minutes. Okay. Maybe, okay, can we have time for questions? Oh, even better, because I realize I'm over time, but I'll be delighted to take questions. Yes, good point. Are we okay for questions? Oh, wait, okay. Ένα νεράκι, παρακαλώ. Ναι.
Καλημέρα σας. Απλά επειδή το πρώτο session όταν τελειώσει, αν θέλετε να πάρετε το διπλωματάκι, το ότι παρακολουθήσατε, αυτοί που είστε στο πρώτο session, παρακαλώ να πάτε στη γραμματεία να πάρετε το διπλωματάκι και θα πάμε στο δεύτερο session μετά, εντάξει. Οπότε θα έχουμε λίγο μέσα έξω για αυτό το πράγμα.
Ναι, απλά να συμπληρώσω, όσοι θα παραμείνουν και στα επόμενα workshop, όταν πάρουν το πρώτο πιστοποιητικό, να δηλώσουν ότι θα είναι και στα επόμενα, θα διευκολυνθεί η διαδικασία. Σας ευχαριστούμε. Ναι. Ερωτήσεις? Ναι.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the great lecture. My question is, I guess other people will have it as well, is why wouldn't a hypoxic chamber work as well?
Thank you.
That's the question.
Yes. A fantastic question. I'll pay you later for that, okay? No. Seriously, it's a very, very good question. The reason the hypoxic chamber doesn't work is that it has to do with a little bit of also what we heard from the athlete early on, is that it's got to do with the amount of time that you can be exposed to the dose. Normally, being in a hypoxic chamber, typically if you're doing it in your home, let's say here, you'll buy a tent of some sort, or you may buy a half tent that you put in your bed. So basically, you're sleeping next to your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and you're in half a tent, so you're sitting like this. You're doing it maybe for 7 hours. Your wife is very upset with you, it causes these problems. You can't touch her, or she can't touch you. That's a different story. But more important than that, you're only spending a small amount of time. We know that the dose that you require needs to be few. So if you can be in the tent for 18 hours or 20 hours, it would work. So there's no reason mechanistically that it won't work. But the problem is, if you did stay there 18 hours, your performance will go down because you can't do the things that you need to do. But I like your point, because I'm passionate about the marathon, as you can tell. I see Spiros Luis's cup next door here, and I just want a Greek to win the marathon, Olympic marathon again in my lifetime. Then I can die happily. But for that to happen, maybe what we need to do is do what other countries are doing, but we're not in the great climatic, financial climate to do that. But maybe Sports Excellence, the Ίδρυμα Σταύρος Νιάρχος can help. When I was now in China, and I've visited the facility in Beijing, there's another facility that's being built, well, different facilities around the world. You can now have hypoxic hotels. We don't need a big hotel, but we can have a hypoxic villa that we can prepare for our marathon runners. They can live here and spend time here, and then go out to Ethiopia and Kenya. Why not? Let's think out of the box. If other countries are doing that, why aren't we? We should be able to do that. Find ways to do it, and don't say, well, we don't have the money. Let's just buy tents. If you put all the money that's been spent on tents together, all the money that's been spent on doping, you would be able to build not only a villa, you'd be able to build a skyscraper. So I hope I've answered your question. As I say, mechanistically, there's no difference. It's just the amount of time. Okay?
It's not practical.
It's not practical. Yes, simple answer. Yes. Well, thank you. Microphone. And can you please just introduce yourself? I'd love to know who I'm speaking to.
Μπορώ να κάνω τις ερωτήσεις στα ελληνικά.
Βεβαίως. I'll translate.
Υπάρχει προσωπικό όριο για κάποιον που θέλει να πάει σε υψόμετρο, ή είναι δεδομένο? Αν δεν χρησιμοποιήσουμε σκηνή και κάνουμε το εξής, κάνουμε προπόνηση στα 1000 μέτρα και κοιμηθούμε στα 3000, που έχουμε τον Όλυμπο, ας πούμε, εδώ. Π.χ. λειτουργεί, έχει κάποια σημασία?
Ευχαριστώ. Πολύ ενδιαφέρουσες ερωτήσεις. I'll just explain the questions. The first question was, is there a limit in terms of going to altitude? And second question is, here in Greece, could we possibly be training at 1,000 meters, for example, then going to Mount Olympus, which is at 3,000, you're saying, yes, and sleeping there? The first question, I think, is the easier one, and it's the question that we were discussing 4 days ago in Shenzhen, is that, because I've never been to 4,800 meters, okay, so going to Peru for me is going to be a challenge, because I've never been that high. And typically, and we're trying to put together a research group, and I asked the group who've got a lot of experience, we want to take 20 members of our team to Peru, 4,800 meters, and the prediction is that we're going to send back 2 people out of 20 because they're going to have altitude sickness. Okay, so 2 people will get ill. But that's very high at 4,800 meters. You don't need to go necessarily at 4,800 meters for endurance benefit, necessarily. So for the kind of altitude we're talking about, let's say going to 2,200 in Kenya, or 2,800 in terms of Ethiopia, as long as you do it sensibly, you shouldn't have a problem. That altitude shouldn't be a problem for almost anybody. You may have the symptoms you heard before, like some headache, difficult to sleep and stuff like that, but normally in a week you get better from that. The problem we also have going to where we're going in Peru is that where we land and where the altitude facility is, you land at I think, 2,000 something, but we go to 4,800 within 8 hours. It's the rate of going up which is causing the altitude sickness as well. Either way, the best answer to your question is try and acclimatize to those conditions that you're going to go to. So if you are going to go high, just try and using tent, using whatever you can, familiarize yourself to that. And when you do go to altitude, take time to go high. Don't go up very quickly is really the answer. But at the altitudes for endurance benefit, you don't really need to go that high.
Μπορεί να λειτουργήσει εδώ, πηγαίνοντας σε ένα υψόμετρο 1.000 μέτρα.
Ναι, να απαντήσω στο δεύτερο, ναι.
Ή 1.500 μέτρα και μετά να πας ας πούμε, στο Περού ή στην Κένια που εκεί ας πούμε, λειτουργεί, μπορεί να λειτουργήσει
όχι, αν ξεκινήσεις στα 1.500 για να κάνεις acclimate, για να πας στα 4.000, όχι. Γιατί βασικά πρέπει να κάνεις acclimate σε αυτά που θα πας. Αρχινάμε 1.500 και μετά ανεβαίνουμε, ώστε να κάνουμε προσαρμογή, ακριβώς.
Προσαρμογή.
Αλλά απαντήσω στο δεύτερο ερώτημα που είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ερώτηση και ο πρώτος τρόπος απάντησης είναι να το κάνουμε αυτό. Είναι ένα πολύ ωραίο πείραμα. Αν έχεις μια ομάδα, είναι κάτι που θα ήταν πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα να κάνουμε. Ιδιαίτερα, and the question was going at 1,000 and sleeping at 3,000. Αν μπορούσαμε να το κάνουμε χρονικά και να μείνει κάποιος σε 3.000 μέτρα για αρκετό χρονικό διάστημα, ας υποθέσουμε ή και περισσότερο, okay, ένα μήνα, whatever, my prediction is ότι θα υπάρχει πολύ καλό benefit. Το κάνει κανένας αυτό? Και γιατί το λέω αυτό? Γιατί αν μένεις στις 3.000 μέτρα και γίνεται η προσαρμογή, γιατί είσαι εκεί, ας πούμε, 18 ώρες την ημέρα, okay, ή 20 ώρες. Σημαίνει ότι πρέπει να μένεις εκεί, όχι να πας για 3 ώρες ή 2 ώρες. Μένεις εκεί. Okay, κατεβαίνεις για training και ξανανεβαίνεις πάνω. Θα ήταν πολύ ενδιαφέρον να κάνουμε.
Αυτό που γίνεται εδώ, τουλάχιστον γνωρίζω, είναι η διαμονή είναι στα 1.000 μέτρα και ο ύπνος είναι στα 2.000. Αυτό γίνεται εδώ.
Για μένα αυτό το benefit θα είναι πολύ μικρό.
Είναι πολύ μικρό.
Πολύ μικρό και σαν σχετικά θα έλεγα, αν υπάρχει κάποιο κόστος, θα έλεγα. Το benefit είναι ότι αν υπάρχει training camp και έχεις αθλητές μαζί, αυτό είναι θετικό. Θα κερδίσουν κάτι από αυτό. Αλλά από το altitude κομμάτι δεν νομίζω. Το improvement είναι τόσο μικρό. Αλλά το ωραίο και αυτό θέλω να εστιάσω είναι ότι υπάρχει τεχνολογία τώρα και έχετε τεχνολογία εδώ στο Sports Excellence. Κάντε τις μετρήσεις. Δοκιμάστε. Παίρνετε τον αθλητή σας και αυτό δεν είναι καθόλου doping. Είναι anti-doping. Παίρνεις τον αθλητή, παίρνεις τα αίματα, τα κάνεις του δώσω Sport Excellence, κάνουν οι αθλητές ακριβώς αυτό που λες, ξαναπαίνεις τα δίκτυα, το κοιτάς. Και μην νιώθει ο αθλητής ή ο coach, κάνει μετολογικά στο Sports Excellence ή στο TEFA, whatever. Δείτε, κάνουν doping αυτοί. Όχι, κάνεις anti-doping. Ή θες να δεις, δουλεύει αυτό. Okay. Αλλά αν είχα μια επιλογή και μου άρεσε πάρα πολύ η ιδέα σου και δεν ξέρω αν υπάρχει κάπου στην Όλυμπο στα 3.000 μέρες να μείνεις για πολύ διάστημα. Αν υπάρχει, να το κάνουμε. Είμαι πολύ διαθετημένος και όχι μόνο αυτό, να το ξέρετε αυτό, πριν από, θα έλεγα εδώ και 2 χρόνια, παρακαλούσα να βρω ομάδες σε όλο τον κόσμο να μας αφήσουν να κάνουμε κάτι τέτοιο. Και δεν βρίσκαμε ομάδες και είχαμε τα λεφτά. Και τελικά πήγαμε στην Αιθιοπία πέρυσι και πήραμε τους αθλητές στην Αιθιοπία λόγω που δεν είχαμε πρόσβαση αλλού. Δηλαδή, μπορούμε να κάνουμε αυτό το πράγμα και είμαι σίγουρος ότι το Sports Excellence θα ενδιαφερθεί γι' αυτό.
Άλλη μία ερώτηση. Τι ποσοστό άσκησης κάνεις στα 3.000 μέτρα? Τι ποσοστό άσκησης κάνεις όταν φτάνεις στα 3.000 μέτρα?
The type, okay. The question was, Mershi, listeners will be answering this as well tonight. What type of training do you do at 3,000 meters? Θα έλεγα ότι για κάποιον που δεν έχει πάει στις 3.000 μέτρα, θα έλεγα ότι τις πρώτες εβδομάδες που θα είναι εκεί, την πρώτη φορά που πάει, είναι περισσότερο για acclimation, να κάνει familiarize. Γιατί είναι πολύ δύσκολο να κάνεις training στις 3.000 μέτρα, άμα δεν έχεις πάει στο υψόμετρο. Αλλά εφόσον έχεις περάσει αυτό το στάδιο και έχεις γίνει acclimatized σε other conditions, μπορείς να κάνεις και training που είναι, ας πούμε, easy constant load, δηλαδή σχετικά εύκολη στο γαλακτικό aerobic threshold, αλλά μπορείς να κάνεις και όπως θα δείξουμε μετά το βράδυ ο Mershi, κάνουμε και interval training. Δηλαδή είναι απίστευτο. Ξεκινάμε στα περίπου 2.900 και τρέχουμε πάνω 800, κάνουμε 15 φορές. Δηλαδή κάνουμε interval training και στις 3.000 μέτρα. Αλλά δεν το κάνεις την πρώτη φορά. Άμα το κάνεις την πρώτη φορά, πάει τέλειωσες. Αλλά είναι το familiarization που πρέπει να κάνεις. Μπορεί να σου πάρει 1 χρόνο να μπορείς να κάνεις αυτά τα είδους τα training. Όπως ακούσαμε και νωρίτερα, την πρώτη φορά που πας δεν μπορείς να τρέξεις με τους local. Σιγά σιγά όμως, κάνοντας familiarization, πηγαίνοντας στα πιο εύκολα sessions, μετά μπορείς να κάνεις και αυτό. Εγώ νομίζω δεν πρέπει να αλλάξει το training που κάνουμε λόγω του altitude. Απλώς θα είναι πιο δύσκολο και αυτό θα δημιουργήσει άλλες περιοχές. Okay. Στο μέσο, συγγνώμη.
Thank you, Yanni. Thank you very much. Some comments. Yeah. We try actually the training with Vasilis Kromidas. Vasilis Kromidas was our triathlete champion, and we tried in 2004. Before 2004, we lived in Karpenisi, 1,000 meters. We were training in Karpenisi, 1,000 meters, and we were sleeping in Katafigio in Velouchi, 2,000. Actually, it was not really work.
Yeah. My prediction was, thank you, Takis, sorry, at 2,000 meters, it's just not high enough.
Yes, yes. 2 comments. For the training interval in the high altitude, I don't know about the speed, because your point was come to race a week before the race, correct? I have 2 comments. Και ο κύριος Πόλιας μπορεί να μας πει καλύτερα και την εμπειρία του about the speed. If you are losing your speed when you are trying interval in the high altitude with uphills.
First response, μέχρι να πάει το μικρόφωνο, αν πάρεις το μικρόφωνο εκεί, μέχρι να τον απαντήσω το πρώτο κομμάτι, I'm not saying that you only do that. Speed is important. You have to do everything. So I don't know if I did show you. I went quickly though. We did those altitude interval sessions. Then a few days before, we did that speed session on the track. So what you're doing is you're making it fun. You're integrating, and that's what we discussed yesterday at dinner with Mershi. It's a skill and art to combine these things. It becomes interesting. But what we can't do today, and the reason Mershi is here today, is nobody, at least in marathon running, has ever developed biomarkers to understand really what training works and what doesn't work. So I can't stand up here, but no one can in the whole globe, to stand up and say, this is the training you should do. If they're saying it, they're lying to you, they're over-exaggerating, because no one knows. And actually, Mershi will talk more about this tonight. Our hypothesis for his PhD is, for a talented athlete, if you train in this box, whatever you do, you may get the same response. It may be so ridiculously crazy that as long as you're stressing the system, it may not matter. And I know when I was going to come here, I was asked, oh, actually, I'm going to Oslo tomorrow to give a talk. The first talk they asked me to do is talk about periodization. And I said, I can't give you a lecture on periodization. Why? There's a lot of literature on it. No, I said, there's a lot of literature on what people do, but there's no biomarkers on what really works.
Okay, so about the speed, I've been in several places for high altitude, not only in Kenya, but in Morocco, in South Africa, in Font-Romeu, in France.
Yes.
And what I've seen, okay, when you do short intervals, you run faster because the air is thinner, so you can run faster, and you're not getting so much tired. Of course, when you do more than 4 minutes intervals, 6 minutes, 2,000 meters and stuff like that, then it's much more difficult. But what I think is that if you train slow in high altitude, like in Atlas, I was with Lalafi and this kind of runners. I was there for a month. I've run a marathon in Agrinio, 2:19. It was my best at that moment. Then I went to high altitude and stayed there for about 25 days. I was doing only slow running because I couldn't do something better, just 1 or 2 intervals. And then I ran another marathon in Belgrade with very hot conditions, and I ran 2:18. So yes. It was like a miracle how that happened.
Highly said it's a miracle or magic.
Yes. And
yes, thank you. But can you see, there's no reason, Takis, we can't produce Greek marathon runners. Because there's a talent, because we're genetically similar, okay? All we need to do is create the environment.
Yes, but what I've seen in my career from altitude training is that you have to test. You have to, spend a lot of time there.
Totally, and actually...
Otherwise, you cannot find you because it's a completely individual thing.
No, and it's actually, thank you for that as well. This is a plea to the coaches. And Moshe is very unique. Coaches, please, the coaches in here, I don't know how many coaches we have in the room. I hope there's many of you. Be open to the scientists. Don't be afraid of the scientists and the physicians. They're there to help you. Work together and test. But don't test by yourself, because he's gone now. But if you test by yourself, you're just looking at performance. But as you said, you came down and you went to Belgrade where it was hot. You could have done a slow time, and you would have concluded, oh, altitude didn't work. But you're in the heat, you know? So my point is, experiment, work together. I mean, Moshe is coming into this saying, Yanis, I've produced all these great results, but I know nothing about coaching. And I'm not being facetious here. He has a lot of experience, but he doesn't know what really works, because no one does. So we're gonna test this way and that way. He'll explain tonight what are we going to do to answer how do we do it. And it applies to all sports, by the way.
2 more comments, Yanis.
Yes.
In sports excellence, we are trying, the last 6 months, actually, Yanis Psarelis is very sensitive with Tokyo. We are trying to make the heat chamber in our lab. We are proposing to firemen to come there to get training. After Mati disaster, we're very sensitive. We didn't know that we need to help them.
Yes. Taki, you were having a discussion out there. I use that as an example because in my laboratory, because you know the universities are businesses as well. We need to bring money in, or our university fires us, all right? So what my colleagues are doing to bring in research money, as sports scientists, we're bringing a lot of money in for the firefighters, because they are very, very, and the pill that I'm wearing, that's exactly what you want the firemen to have. This watch, which we'll show you just now, is exactly what you want, because you can say, Vali afton exo, Vali afton mesa. It's so obvious in real time, and you'll see this. I mean, this is a fantastic facility because you'll see, we'll do it just now, okay? Imagine the firefighter, the emergency service, the guy in the aeroplane, in the Chinook, okay, etc., etc. Have data. And there's no reason. Then you can support your TEFA, you can support the sports excellence. Work together, develop innovations. And you'll see, for example, the sensors that we're going to try just now. The sensor was 20 grams. It's the one actually that Alexis will use. But if interacting with companies like I won't say which one, a very expensive luxury Swiss watch, the sensor's gone from 20 grams to 0.2 grams because they want to put it into a luxury watch. The industry wants this technology, Takis. We can work together and make it, and already Tokyo Olympics, the organizing committee, have agreed for one of our partners in our project to allow us to use these pods that we're going to show you, these sensors, in competition. And the beauty, you know why they're wanting to do that? They gave us the approval to do that. Because they want to make television more interesting. Those of you who watch Formula One, they have all these parameters to make it interesting. Marathon running to watch is the most boring thing for everyone besides me and some of you in this room, because we are, you know, crazy about marathon running. But the public don't care. Can we make it more interesting? Have all those responses, and then those same responses you use in the clinic to see your, because now you want to be here and you want to interact, but you also want to look after your patients. On your phone, you could watch every single patient while you're sitting here. Isn't it nice? And it's not science fiction in 20 years' time. For me, you call sports excellence, that is what you need to be doing. Innovation, innovation, innovation.
The last comment is that we have a route for the coaches, πίσω από τον Όλυμπο, if you know Kazania, if anyone know Kazania, so there is a route very good for running, and we can go by car. You can't sleep there, but we have 2,200. Yannis Farelis has designed this. Thank you very much. Sorry for the time.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. Very good points. There's a question about. Okay.
Hi, Professor. My name is Spyros. My question is how long do you think? So, if we take a Greek athlete and we take them to Kenya, a training camp, how long do you think they should stay there? How long would it take them to adapt?
Yes.
And then, when they come back to sea level, how long will the results remain? So, how long after being at sea level will the what they've gained? How long will it take them to lose it?
Yes, the very quick and the most accurate answer would be what we heard early on. You got to test yourself, you know, because as you saw from the numbers and as you heard from even the speakers here, it's so variable. So if I gave you a number, I most likely will be right for 50% of your athletes, but we don't know which 50%. so it's no use. But from experience. And this is going to, in one sense, disappoint you. It's not going to be the answer you want to hear. That's why I like the suggestion next to you, because this could be the solution. What we did with Mo Farah, or what Barry did with Mo Farah, is that he stopped going for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. He started going for 6 months. The problem is, how many would you want to go and live in Ethiopia for a year? Actually, that's the kind of thing you need to do. Very long and spend a lot of time, get over those difficult times. But maybe if we're a little bit out of the box, you can use a combination of what we heard before, and then go for periods of time to Ethiopia or Kenya, come to the Sub-2 training camp, because not only the altitude, experience running with some Ethiopian runners. Experience running, for example, for my health and fitness, I sometimes, when I'm in Ethiopia, go and do the same training runs that Kenenisa does in the forest, not at his speed. And it's the most amazing thing to do. I don't know if any of you have done this in Ethiopia. You're running in a forest, which means that you have into constant change direction. Imagine trees, you have 1,000 trees in an area of 1,000 meters. What that means is you've got a tree every meter. But you're running, for Kenenisa, he's running at 18 kilometers an hour. You know what that means? He's doing that all the time. Imagine the benefit in terms of structure and function that he has, you know, by doing that all the time. You know, so you can combine, but the real answer is test, and the longer the better, and don't be put off by the awful feelings in the first time, which is really what puts people off.
Because I believe that there's a small number of athletes in Greece, and I don't think they would risk living in Kenya for 6-7 months just for one performance. So,
if you are right, and I hope you're not right, but if you are right, then even more reason why we have to do the kind of thing we heard before. But I want to believe that you're wrong and that we can convince. I mean, you're an athlete. It's your profession. You know, sport, and we must talk about this as well. Sport is business. It's a profession. It's no longer the pastime of the gentleman. Okay, to use a chauvinistic term. You know, I prepare. You prepare for our jobs the best we can do. I go to the best places in the world for what I need to do. Athletes need to do the same. If Mo Farah thought the same way, and it sounds like I'm a supporter of Mo, I'm not. I'm just using it as an example because it's an example that I know well. He was an athlete, as I said, who was being lapped. Then had a young family. He said goodbye to his family, and he went to Kenya, Ethiopia. I've seen him because he's training in the same places where our athletes are training. I've seen his lifestyle. It's a very difficult life. But actually, it's a better life than sitting in your hotel, injecting yourself with something, and trying to keep alive because you may die from a stroke because you're taking drugs. It depends what you're wanting to do. For me, that's the only solution. Or developing that kind of thing and also looking at innovations. Then we can do it.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for good questions.
I would like about what you said is, I mean, if for more Farah, if you are able to be only one time lapped from athletes like Kenenisa, it means that you are a very good athlete. So it was the price to sacrifice some of your time and spend now a year in Kenya or in Ethiopia.
Yes.
And what is the lowest high altitude that you get some benefits?
I would say it depends what you define some. I think you'll get benefit at 1,500 meters too, but it'll be negligible.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something
but no, okay. I would say, personally, from my experience, I wouldn't go anywhere lower than 2,200 meters because I think you're really wasting your time. And then the lower you go, the longer you have to stay, and I still don't believe you're going to get enough. It's testing again, and you can do these tests. I would say measure, 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 because you don't know. Actually, there may be a Greek in one of the towns in Greece that has a genetic disorder and has hematocrit higher than a Kenyan and Ethiopian. Find him. He must exist. Anyway, I'm being silly with my example, but you get my point, that you can find the Mo Farahs. They exist in Greece. We just got to find them. And that leads me to another thing that we need to be talking about is, for me, the bigger problem is not the altitude. The reason why Greece doesn't have the runners to actually take to Ethiopia and Kenya is the problem that we have in terms of inactivity. And the biggest threat to mankind is starvation of physical activity. I run when I'm in Mytilene. I'm going there on Monday. I'll be running, and people say, "Now trelos putrechi." But they forget that we invented running in one sense. Okay, so if the kids are not running, how are you going to get the marathon runners? Ethiopia, everybody runs. Kenya, everybody runs. But we are the same genetics. We're designed to run as they are. In Jamaica, everyone sprints. That's what they good sprinters. So that's what we need to do. Anyway, questions.
Όσον αφορά την παραμονή στο υψόμετρο, υπάρχει κάποιο πρωτόκολλο το οποίο λέγεται διακοπτόμενη έκθεση σε υψόμετρο. Σύμφωνα με αυτό λέει ότι κάθεσαι, ξέρω εγώ, γύρω στα 3 με 4 λεπτά στα 5-6 χιλιάδες μέτρα σταδιακά το ανεβάζεις και μετά αναπνέεις καθαρό οξυγόνο, το οξυγόνο που έχεις στο περιβάλλον σου, δηλαδή γύρω στα 2-3 λεπτά. Και το κάνεις αυτό γύρω στη 1-1,5 ώρα. Αυτό δουλεύει το ίδιο, από ό,τι λένε, δουλεύει το ίδιο με το να κοιμάσαι ψηλά, δηλαδή με το να κοιμηθείς, ξέρω εγώ, 8 ή 10 ώρες, ας πούμε, γύρω στα 2.000-2.500 μέτρα. Έπειτα κάτι άλλο. Μπορεί να ελεγχθεί το αν είναι αποτελεσματικό αυτό με το κορεσμό του οξυγόνου. Δηλαδή, πόσο πρέπει να πέφτει ο κορεσμός για κάποιον που κάνει διακοπτόμενη υποξική προπόνηση. Είτε κάθεται στην τέντα, είτε κάνει προπόνηση διαλυματική με το ποδήλατο ή με το διάδρομο. Ευχαριστώ.
Θα σε απογοητεύσω. Δεν έχω δεδομένα ούτε στο ένα ούτε στο άλλο. Να σου πω με τεκμηρωμένη απάντηση σε αυτό. The question was if you're using some new approaches, which is to actually combine altitude training with provision of oxygen as well, to do a kind of intermittent protocol. Ακούγεται πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα. It's a very interesting approach that can be used.
Εγώ προσωπικά σας ρωτάω, γιατί έχω υποξικό μηχάνημα στο σπίτι. Και το είχα δοκιμάσει και δούλεψε.
Αναλόγως, όταν λες δούλεψε, αναλόγως τι περιγράφεις ότι δούλεψε.
Να σας πω, δεν είχα τόσο μεγάλη διαφορά στην άνοδο του αιματοκρίτη και της αιμοσφαιρίνης, αλλά είχα διαφορά στην προπόνηση, είχα καλύτερο recovery, τα πόδια μου δεν ήταν τόσο βαριά όσο αν έκανα μόνο την προπόνηση και αισθανόμουν καλύτερα. Δηλαδή και μου βγήκε και στους χρόνους που είχα, στα βάτ που έβγαλα στο ποδήλατο και στην προπόνηση που έκανα.
Και η απάντηση, για να μην ξεχάσω, η απάντηση που έδωσες εκεί τώρα ήταν η απάντηση που θα έδινα. Δηλαδή, θα έκανα predict ότι δεν θα άλλαζε ο μετακρίτης σου, δεν θα άλλαζε η εγκλωβίνη σου.
Άλλαζε πολύ λίγο, Άλεξ.
Ναι, και όπως ξέρεις, αυτά δεν είναι ότι είναι σταθερό έτσι. Και επειδή θα ένιωσες καλύτερη προπόνηση κλπ.
Είχα πολύ μεγαλύτερα νούμερα
Ναι,
από αυτά.
θα έλεγα και μπορεί να πει κάποιος να μην το απαντήσω έτσι, θα έλεγα θα είναι περισσότερο placebo effect. Γιατί το λέω αυτό, είναι επειδή πώς μπορούμε να εξηγήσουμε το ότι είχες αυτό το benefit, γιατί το benefit που έρχεται από αυτήν την είδους προπόνησης και adaptation είναι από το oxygen carrying capacity, όχι ιδιαίτερα από τι γίνεται μέσα στο μη. Και έτσι, αλλά δεν έχει σημασία το ότι βοήθησε. Πολλές φορές όταν κάνουμε κάτι με τους αθλητές και βοηθάει, και πολλές φορές μπορεί να τους δώσουμε ζάχαρη και αυτοί νομίζουν ότι παίρνουν κάτι που θα είναι super performance enhancement. Και δεν είναι, είναι το placebo. Είναι απίστευτο τι μπορείς να κάνεις στο level του εγκεφάλου.
Ταυτόχρονα έκανα και προπόνηση διαλυματική όμως σε υψόμετρο. Δεν έμενα μόνο στον αναπνέω κάποια λεπτά και κάποια λεπτά.
Που σημαίνει ότι μπορεί να γινόταν κάτι αλλαγές και μέσα στο μυϊκό σύστημα, μέσα στο μη, αλλά χωρίς να έχεις νούμερα ή κάτι να το ελέγξεις, είναι δύσκολο να απαντηθεί.
Ανέβηκε γύρω στο 0, η αιμοσφαιρίνη 0,5-0,6%. Δεν ήταν μεγάλη διαφορά. Αλλά είχα διαφορά στην απόδοση μου. Και στο recovery.
Αλλά αυτό που μου αρέσει που έκανες είναι ότι έκανες τις μετρήσεις ταυτόχρονα να δεις τι επίπτωση έχει. Αυτό είναι fantastic. Και αυτό είναι δηλαδή το μήνυμα για όλους σας εδώ. Είναι δουλέψτε με άτομα που έχουν πρόσβαση. Μην νιώθετε ότι κάνετε κάτι κακό επειδή χρησιμοποιείτε. Υπάρχει στη WADA το needle policy, να μην χρησιμοποιούμε βελόνες κλπ. Αυτό είναι τελείως δεχτό κλπ. Αλλά όταν έχουμε έναν αθλητή που πρέπει να κάνει το training και θέλει να πάρει δείγματα για να καταλάβει τα biomarkers, συνεργάσουμε με τις ομάδες που υπάρχουν και δεν υπάρχει θέμα για μένα. Τουλάχιστον δεν είναι η άποψή μου. Και έτσι μπορείς να κάνεις inform τον coach, τον αθλητή, και για μένα είναι πολύ σημαντικό αυτό. Γιατί έτσι βρίσκεις τι δουλεύει για σένα. Γιατί ακριβώς αυτό που έκανες, αν το κάνει ο Μέρσερ στον Κενενίστα, μπορεί να μην δουλέψει. Και δεν το ξέρεις μέχρι να το κάνεις. Αλλά το συζητάμε αυτό μετά περισσότερο οι δυο μας, αν θέλεις.
Ένα τελευταίο συγγνώμη για τους δείχτες. Στη μελέτη που δείχνεις, συγγνώμη για τους δείχτες, γιατί μιλάμε για τον αιματοκρίτη, η φερριτίνη αδειάζει. Άρα πρέπει να είμαστε πολύ προσεκτικοί, πολύ γρήγορα να γίνει ο αγώνας. Γιατί το είπες πολύ καλά μια εβδομάδα πριν, γιατί αδειάζει η φερριτίνη και πρέπει και η διατροφή του να είναι πολύ προσεχμένη και να το παρακολουθούμε αυτό.
Ναι, πολύ σημαντικό και γι' αυτό φαντάζομαι όταν πάτε υψόμετρο είναι ευνόητο ότι να πάρθει σίδερο ταυτόχρονα, αλλά όχι σίδερο έτσι crazy, γιατί όπως ξέρουμε είναι toxic, δημιουργεί και προβλήματα.